Sir, Ganeshan sir, ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸರಿ ಕಳಿಸ್ಕೊಡ್ತೀರಾ ಲಿಂಕ್ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಬೈ ಚಾನ್ಸ್?
ಅಲ್ಲ, ಅವರು ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರೆ ಕಷ್ಟ. ಅದು ಕೆಳಗಡೆ ಇಂಟರ್ನ್ಯಾಷನಲ್ ನಂಬರ್ ಇದೆ, ಮೇಲ್ಗಡೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅವರು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಝೂಮ್ ಡೌನ್ಲೋಡ್ ಮಾಡಿರ್ಬೇಕು, ಅದೆಲ್ಲ ಹೇಳಿ ಆ ಮನುಷ್ಯ ನಮ್ತರ ಅಜ್ಞಾನಿ.
Ganeshan, is it on broadcast mode?
Yeah. There are 10 people, 11, 14. Now, what I will do is I will, ಇವರು ಕಿಶೋರ್ ಅವರು ಕಳಿಸ್ಬೇಕಲ್ಲ?
Yes, if you could help Kishore out to join, I think that would be great.
Okay. I am just testing my slides, friends.
Yes, sir. Please do. It's coming clear.
No, so that tell me if you can see.
Yeah,
we can see very well.
Perfectly right. Perfectly all right.
Right, sir. Thank you. We'll let Kishore go first. Right. No. Oh, thanks, sir.
ಮಹೇಶ್, ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ಸಿಗ್ನಲ್ ಕೊಟ್ಬಿಡಿ, ಯಾವಾಗ ಶುರು ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ.
Yes, I'm waiting for Dr. Kishore to join in.
ಈಗ ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ?
I'll tell you, sir. We are totally 22.
23. ಓಕೆ, ನನಗೂ ಕಾಣಿಸುತ್ತೆ, ಗೊತ್ತಿದೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ಹೇಳಿ ನಾನು ಚಾಟ್ ಗೀಟ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ನನಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ವಿಜಯ್ ಬಾಸ್, ಯಾವ್ದಾದ್ರು ಕ್ವಶನ್ಸ್ ಬಂದ್ರೆ ನನಗೆ ಹೆಂಗ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ?
Vijay will point out, sir.
Okay.
And we are live.
Okay. Welcome, friends. We are just waiting for some more participants to join, and then we'll start.
Dr. Kishore has joined.
Dr. Kishore has just joined. Yeah.
Dr. Kishore is muted his audio. He has to enable his audio. He's not joined with audio. I think he has to log in.
Okay. Yeah, I am able to hear now something.
Yes, sir. Now we can hear you.
We can hear you also. Welcome, Kishore. But ಇವಾಗ ಬರೀ ಗೋಡೆ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮುಖ ಕಾಣಿಸ್ಬೇಕೀಗ.
Hi, Kishore.
I think he's gone to get some.
Just give me a minute.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Yeah, with the mask also. Fine.
With the mask also. Social distancing.
Mask.
Huh?
Yatake Swami.
ಇಲ್ಲ,
you are alone there, no?
ನನಗೆ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ನೆಗಡಿ ಇದೆ.
Okay. Wow, you can transmit it through the web also.
No. I am sneezing to my own screen. I don't want that to happen.
Kishore, you are going to speak first. We'll start in another 2 minutes, and then Nimesh is going to speak.
But Kishore, you won't go away, will you?
No, sir.
Because I want your response to what I have to share here.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thanks so much.
I will stay till the end of the session, sir.
Beautiful.
Yes, sir.
Beautiful.
Swaminath sir, usually I start, introduce everybody, and I'll hand it over to you. I'll only introduce you. You can introduce both of them.
ಡೀಟೇಲ್ಸ್ ಇದೆಯಾ ನನಗೆ? ಅಲ್ಲ, ನೀವೇ ಮಾಡ್ಬಿಡಿ ಮೂರುನು. ಅವ್ರ ಲೇಟೆಸ್ಟ್ ಹಾಟ್ ಆಫ್ ಏನೇನ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾರೋ ನಂಗೆ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ ಇದೊಂದು.
ನನ್ನ ಹತ್ರ ಇಲ್ಲ.
Okay. Right.
But I know them anyway.
Start.
We're waiting for, it's the numbers are crossing. It's crossed 32 odd. It's going up.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's adding up. So I'm just waiting. 2 more minutes and I'll start.
Sure. I pass on the information to a few NGOs working with homeless. I don't know if they are here. Okay. No? Some of our friends from Delhi and elsewhere. Because we must also go beyond our core mental health discipline for such an issue. No?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Just for the sake of audience, we're going to start in about 2 minutes. We're just waiting because the people are just joining in, checking their audios and videos and things like that. So
Am I audible, Dr. Vijay?
perfectly, sir. Perfectly fine.
Audible? Yeah.
ನೀವು ಶುರು ಮಾಡಕ್ ಮುಂಚೆ ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ಮುಖ ತೋರಿಸ್ಬಿಡಿ ಆಮೇಲೆ ತಿರ್ಗಾ ಮಾಸ್ಕ್ ಹಾಕೊಳ್ಳಿ. Because a lot of people might not have seen you. It will be useful for them to know
Okay.
the seniority and the person with wealth of experience in this
I
field.
have grey beard, grey mustache, black hair. Swami?
Yes, boss.
Saka?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is no duller moment with Dr. Swami around.
Absolutely. He's one of the, I don't know whether you know about him or not. He is one of the most troublesome persons one can ever think of. Constant.
Sir, to me, he is friendly neighborhood, sir.
Okay. I think it's time for us to start. Okay, everybody, put on your seatbelts. We'll make a start. I welcome who have logged in and are able to view this webinar. I welcome the panelists, Professor Nimesh Desai, Dr. Swaminath, Dr. Kishore Kumar. Dr. Swaminath is going to be our moderator here, and our the sponsor and the person who is hosting us from Microlabs, Mr. Ganeshan. We welcome you, sir. And my coordinator, Dr. Mahesh, also is here. Okay. Quickly, I'll run through few things. Now, you have few things on your screen. You have Q&A, question and answers. The audience are requested to post their questions in Q&As. The chat box is there for you to chat if you want to send messages to anybody, in particular. Questions will be taken up from Q&As. Okay. Unfortunately, this type of webinar doesn't allow people to ask questions visibly or on screen. So they're able to type their questions, but nevertheless, we'll try and make sure and request Swaminath sir to take all the questions if possible, and if the questions are not being taken for answering here, they can even type. One of the panelists can actually type the answers there on the Q&A box there. Okay, we already have 42 attendees and already about 5-6 panelists here as panelists here. So about almost touching 50. So this is the best time to start. I think. Let me introduce Professor Nimesh Desai. Professor Nimesh Desai is the icon of psychiatric services in India. He is the director of IBAS. Welcome you, sir. Welcome you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
And I welcome Dr. Kishore Kumar, who is the consultant and director who runs the who is heading the Banyan, which is an NGO in Chennai, and he was our community psychiatry lead, and I've had the pleasure of working with him in NIMHANS. I welcome you, Dr. Kishore Kumar. Welcome you, sir. With this introduction of panelists, I'll introduce Dr. Swaminath. Dr. Swaminath, who doesn't know Dr. Swaminath? Any psychiatrist in India would know Dr. Swaminath. He doesn't need any introduction. He's there waiting to trigger his bullets. And sir, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay. I welcome all participants to this webinar. As we all know that this particular season, COVID season, which is affected the whole of the world, almost more than 180 countries with huge population being affected, improving, as well as more than 10 lakh people dying. It has affected literally every individual in this world. And it has changed their lifestyle. Now we are going to, Dr. Nimesh was just now speaking that it's going to be pre-COVID and post-COVID, the way we are going to look at life. It has changed the world, it has changed the way we perceive the world, it has changed everything. In the process, it is becoming a big strain on the health infrastructure. It is becoming a big strain on the law and order. It is becoming a big strain on government's capacity to deliver goods to the public at large. And everyone is serving, but there is one group which most people have neglected, not necessarily because they would love to neglect this group, but because this group doesn't intrude itself into the consciousness of the society. It stays at the fringes, would prefer to stay away from everyone, would love to keep to themselves, and most importantly, run away when others try to approach them. Nevertheless, they are equally susceptible, or probably more susceptible, to both the COVID pandemic and the consequences of the COVID pandemic, like the lockdown, the lack of people on the roads, the lack of availability of food, quarantine, everything. People who were able to, feed them on a daily basis are no longer existent. Suddenly they find that whatever their skills they had learned to gain their livelihood in terms of food or even shelter is taken away from them. I'm told that most of the people who are wandering, who are homeless in Bangalore, houseless in Bangalore, have been shifted away to what is now called Nirashrita Parihara Kendra, or what was earlier called the Beggars' Home. So like that, these are the changes which are occurring in this fringe. And unfortunately, like Dr. Desai was telling, most of these people are not, there's no concentration on this particular fringe, basically because they don't intrude into our consciousness, so that we are actually not aware. We were not aware even at other times. But now, they are not coming into our vision, and we are not able to help them out. And people who are actually helping them out are already strained with other things, so that they are being further neglected. So I think this is a very important area which we should touch during this time. And we have two wonderful, fantastic human beings, Dr. Nimesh Desai and Dr. Kishore Kumar. Dr. Kishore Kumar, I'm going to introduce first because he's going to speak first. He's a contemporary of mine at NIMHANS, worked in community psychiatry, not only in India, but all over the world, has put in all his inputs, serving the people who are underserved by literally anywhere. And now has become a director of Banyan, which is one of the very big NGOs in Chennai, looking after homeless persons with mental illness. Nimesh Desai, of course, all of you know, is a professor and director at chief at IBHAS. IBHAS has been in the forefront of dealing with persons with mental illness in a totally different way. It looks after people who come to it taking shelter. After they leave, there is a different way in which I think they deal with. I've heard of it from other people, not so much from Dr. Desai. And I would like to hear from Dr. Desai the very innovative way in which they are dealing with homeless persons with mental illness and ensuring there is continuity of care of the homeless even after they get discharged from IBHAS. So with these few remarks, I would like to call upon Dr. Kishore to start his presentation. Welcome, Dr. Kishore.
Thank you, Dr. Swami. I got baptized into psychiatry when Dr. Desai was the senior resident in Dr. S.M. Channabasavana's unit in NIMHANS in the year 1983, when Dr. Swami was my senior, a person who had full of life, and he was able to take mental health to far off places. Thank you for your kind words. Let me start off with the issue that we are supposed to discuss today. Many of us who work in India may not be aware of the problem of homelessness and mental illness in Indian context. To just give you a rough idea, approximately 1.8 million people are officially designated as being homeless based on the survey. This is the published figure. And about 73 million people have no decent housing as on today. And the government of India is making efforts to provide housing for close to about 30 crore people, I understand. India also is a land of villages. Approximately 6.5 lakh villages are there in India. And from the time of independence, approximately 50,000 villages are lost to development in the country. For example, roads, bridges, canals, industries has engulfed approximately 50,000 villages, and all of these people have migrated into cities and towns, and a significant number of them have been either homeless or earning to manage their own lives, and they are not able to pay the kind of rents that urban locations demand. The next important aspect is when people migrate into cities and towns, they have to manage, work, as well as save for their families back in villages, and the exorbitant rents that exist in cities and towns is a huge challenge. As a result, many people try to compromise and live a minimum quality of life, and therefore we have a large number of people who are homeless. With the emergence of COVID virus infection, which is a global pandemic, it is obvious that a lot of these people, both poor, the middle class, and the rich, are uniformly affected. But the greatest impact of this infection is on the people who are defenseless, who have no resource to manage their lives. And we all know that with the advent of this problem, there has been enormous amount of educating the community through radios, televisions, through pamphlets, and so on and so forth, because social distancing, hygiene, self-protection, and keeping away from any source of infection as either a primary contact or secondary contact is the key. When such is the issue that is there on hand, it is so obvious that a person who is homeless will have no chance to survive in this kind of a situation. Many people could have even died, and we may not have come to know about this particular problem. So when the pandemic broke out, all corporations, municipalities swung into action. The good thing about that in the country is they did something. They were able to take people, move people into facilities within the system. For example, chowltries, major halls, grounds, and so on and so forth. But what got compromised is the essence of what all we were able to do, like social distancing, isolating ourselves, precautions, taking care of ourselves, and most importantly, food and water. Since the onset of summer, a large number of people have many difficulties with summer, and therefore it became a huge challenge for our system. The government of India asked for support from the public to raise resources so that all these people could be supported. If you look at the mental health scenario in the country, there are about 730 districts, 43 mental hospitals, close to 500 odd district mental health programs, and therefore, given this situation, the number of people who are covered by mental health services is almost very, very minimal. Close to 80% of people remain without psychiatric services in the country. That's a sad aspect of it, despite many resources that we have. And largely these resources are confined to cities and towns. When that is the scenario, what happens to people who are homeless? And what happens to those people who are mentally ill? What happens to people who are helpless and living on the streets? Many of us have difficulties about use of terminology, wandering mentally ill, wandering people, this, that, and the other. To me, what is primarily important is that these people are homeless because they don't have shelter above their head, and they need support in a manner which is respectful, in a manner which restores their dignity, in a manner which is very, very proactive. Given the situation of many resources being used in the hospitals, many people being affected, at this point, statistics is of little relevance, because we know that all of us know about the kind of statistics that is published every day. Given this situation, the most people who were neglected or who were not really cared for or who is not a priority is the person who is homeless, and worst of all is the person who is mentally ill with homeless. The challenges that is there for such people is how to contain them in a particular facility, how to initiate distancing, how to provide them the safety measures that is necessary, how to initiate interventions, how to feed him. So the whole situation at the present is a lot of complex issues occurring at the same time. A large number of people are coming into the hospitals, and suddenly there is a kind of scare that is happening in the community that any fever is considered as COVID, making the life of people who manage hospitals almost very, very difficult. So in this context, the most neglected is the homeless people, and worst of all is the person with mental health problems. Given this situation, whatever we have been able to do is to promptly rescue people from the streets, shift them to locations where they could stay. However, in these situations, the kind of services that is required may not have been provided, but it is credit to the government that they have tried to do whatever best they can within the resource that is there. One of the most important things that I have seen is the great effort of people to support and bring in a great sense of volunteerism, where people have tried to chip in whatever resource they have. Some have given their personal time, some have contributed, some have tried to do whatever they could to support the situation. The difference between this pandemic and the a different kind of disaster is that fear that is there in people to jump into action to try and do everything that is possible. So therefore, at the present time, talking about homelessness, mental illness in our context is a very, very difficult kind of a situation. The resource that is necessary to handle a pandemic such as this is huge, On top of that, to address this problem in the context of the most underprivileged, marginalized sections of the society further adds to a huge problem. Given that situation, we all have to continue to think through, mobilize people, understand how best we could try and help this population, because these are the people who are voiceless, who don't have access to care, who cannot easily access care like you and I can do. And let us all try and sensitize each other, mobilize our resources so that we can try and reach these people to the best possible extent, because providing care to them will save their lives. Saving their lives plus supporting their families is going to be a big contribution all of us are going to make. I will close my talk now and wait for the questions that may come up in the due process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore. It's been quite a comprehensive account of the challenges which persons with homeless persons with mental illness face in society, as well as the newer challenges which has arisen because of this COVID situation, as well as the lockdown and the response required by society has been there, but probably not as much as what is required. But you have put in a very positive note that probably what has been done is to the best of what is capable by the government. And I think we have to compliment whichever government it is, state government it is job to have taken care of, as well as the medical personnel in various bodies, as well as NGOs who have gone out and done their best to these people. A lot of them have been, like in Karnataka, I hear that in Bangalore, most of them have been put over to destitute homes. Like that, so many changes have been occurred. So people who have at least a roof on their heads and something to eat, probably not necessarily the way it should have been in terms of giving them proper medical care. Let's leave it at that and then go over to further questions later. I call upon Professor Nimesh Desai from IBAS to start his presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Swaminathan. I hope you can all hear me. Thanks to Dr. Jagdisha, Dr. Mahesh Gowda, Dr. Vijay for having me here, Mr. Ganeshan for all your support. I must say, Kishore, that was a very, very concise, crisp, comprehensive review of the situation. It occurs to me, as you and Swami are saying what you're saying, that as we all know, to understand the present and to plan for the future, we'll need to look at the past. And so my slides are partly going to cover the situation up till now and then come to the issue of homeless persons with mental illness, HPMI, as I'll keep using in the current time and in the near future. Let me move to these slides right away and say that I really think that what happens, unfortunately, is that the homeless mentally ill people really fall between two stools. The persons with mental illness in any such crisis anyway have a difficulty. Homeless people have difficulty. Both of those groups do get taken care of by various measures. And all that Dr. Kishore and Dr. Swami said, I guess, does happen. But the homeless mentally ill actually don't get either of the two services too well. I was just thinking, as Kishore was saying, that in my fieldwork, I have so often seen homeless mentally ill persons who have possibly not bathed for 6 months or 3 months, not eaten for 2 or 3 weeks. And I'm wondering right now at this minute, for that homeless person lying in one corner, who really bothers to go and feed, forget clean? And so that's the angst that I come from. For all the 40 years that I spent in psychiatry and mental health, certainly last 21 years that I spent at IBAS. To move with the slides, am I getting stuck there? See, essentially my outline is going to be, I'll get here. My outline is going to be briefly about the IBAS hospital, the mobile mental health unit service, mobile mental health unit service that we provide, the NGO that I work with, and a recent national seminar that we have. Then I'll come to the hospital data from IBAS and experience during the COVID period, the outreach services that we have had at those homes that my colleagues referred to, and our teams have actually assessed mental health in detail at those homes. And then I'll come to finally the concerns and the issues. Let me see if I can move with these slides. I seem to be stuck with this.
Ganeshan, can you help?
Oh yeah, I get it. Okay, so that's the outline, as I was just now saying. That's the hospital that I've been at 20 years. Besides the fact that it's a quality assured, NABH assured hospital, the satisfaction or pride on behalf of the entire organization is that we try and provide quality with quantity. We are unarguably the largest psychiatry outpatient in the world. On a routine day, we see 1,500 to 2,000 or possibly over 2,000, nearly 2,200 or 25,000 cases just for psychiatry and neurology. 150 to 200 new cases every day. And that to achieve in an old mental hospital, which has just become a mental health institution, it seems that we have kind of fulfilled the mandate, but we were not happy there. We were not happy to merely having been instrumental in doing decustodialization and decriminalization. We were happy, or deinstitutionalization even. We are for the last 7 or 15 years looking at prevention of institutionalization. In fact, one of my dreams, arguably utopian, is to have a bedless hospital, or have a state or a nation where we have all mental health institutions bedless. Is that a worthwhile strategy or goal? We'll have to wait and see. But quickly to come to the hospital data, for the last 25 years, we have kind of seen about 5.5 lakh new cases, patient visits more than 42 lakh. But the interesting part is not that. The interesting part is that our admission rate from the OPD with severe psychotic, floridly disturbed cases is 1% or less consistently. So that 99% of the people can be treated on OPD is something that we should go across. Even for emergency cases, our admission rate is just about 10%. Even more important than it seems to me is that about 10% of our admissions in last 25 years, at 10 to 11% have been through the course or the legally mandated ones, mostly homeless, destitute people. Our success rate in discharge is nearly 100%. The inflow matches the outflow. So that whole issue of long stay patients, the bugbear of mental hospitals, is over. For last 3 years, we have been a zero long stay patients mental health institution. In that background, were we even satisfied with that? No, we were not. I wasn't, and many of us were not. The homeless people that we kept getting through the courts and through the police was only one part, but we knew through our fieldwork and otherwise that hundreds and thousands and lakhs more of homeless mentally ill people. So where are all they? Some of them are still with the families. Families in India and South Asia are still really looking after people well. But the major issue we found is that there are a lot of homeless people on the streets. As Kishore said, our conservative estimate a year ago was 10,000, possibly 20,000 homeless persons with mental illness in Delhi, and 1 lakh, possibly 2 lakh, or maybe even more in the country. And this is only going to increase more. And so, as Dr. Swami was saying, we don't really lay a claim to really provide a complete spectrum of care for everybody, far from it. But yes, our attempt is with a halfway home on the campus, 5 halfway homes in the city of Delhi that we have catalyzed through the High Court and got them operational. Not only the post-treatment care, but we also got into what I borrow the term from pre-hospital care or pre-treatment care from trauma and cardiology and neurology. So we have had an outreach service for, as we will see, at Jama Masjid since 2000 for homeless persons. We have had a MMHU mobile mental health unit since 2012. Not a great experience MMHU, as I will share in a minute. But allow me to say this. I'm sure many of us who have worked with these populations in the hospital community are aware of such situations. But again, this is not the crucial part. The crucial part is this. With rescue, active rescue, and a few months of treatment, this is the difference that you can make in each of those persons' lives. So, as I keep saying, working for homeless mentally ill persons is not only morally compelling and ethically appropriate, is scientifically feasible, but by now, is legally mandated because of the Mental Health Care Act. Mental health care as a right. Is it possible? I think it's possible. At least many pilot and more than pilot experiences. The NGO that we work with is called Ashray Adhikar Abhiyan. That was the in-house NGO for ActionAid India since 2000. And in 2009, it actually registered itself as an NGO. I happen to be chairing the board there. Some very good colleagues there in the staff and in the on the board. The good part is that we have volunteers in this organization who have been homeless persons who have now rehabilitated themselves, including a few people who were homeless mentally ill who have now recovered and rehabilitated themselves. The crucial part came in January 2019 when we organized this national seminar with Supreme Court judges and NALSA and whoever you could get together on board. We had Kishore there, we couldn't have Swami there. He was just returning from a foreign trip. That's the background in which we are talking about now, the COVID period. The hospital data from IBAS, and I've compared a lot of this data sets from March, April 2019 to March, April 2020. Under section 100, in those 2 months in 2019, we received 33 cases. In these 2 months, we received only 21. Forget the other details of how they were admitted. Please note, 4 of them came from those shelter homes that our teams are working at. So what's crucial, I think, is this. And I don't know if Kishore and Swami and other colleagues would agree, and our NGO friends, if they are listening in, please share your views on the chat. I think that in the COVID period from Delhi and elsewhere, as I get to know, the police activity for homeless mentally ill persons is reduced. Understandably, at one level, they're too busy doing many other things. But is that fair to this population? Judicial activity and involvement reduced, if not drastically reduced. At least for IBAS, and I suppose a few other hospitals, if not many, have actually increased their flexibility for looking after homeless people. And we have, surely. I mean, we have become much more flexible despite the new act and the legal hassles to say we will try and reach out to the maximum people in the hospital or outside. And yet, from our data, it would seem clearly that the homeless mentally ill people are not even getting the little service that they were getting earlier. COVID does seem to have compromised the availability of service, mainly because of the police and the judicial officers not being available. And that's something that we need to take note of without being judgmental. Are PMIs really at risk for COVID? The NHRC recently took, I think, a suo motu view or based on their lawyer's complaint, that the risk for homeless persons should be looked at. With all respect, NHRC again made no mention of the homeless mentally ill people. Persons with mental illness at homes, families, with families or on the street. I feel very sad when I see scientific papers and lay articles about how mental hospitals and psychiatric wards are a higher risk of COVID. Because there is crowding, because there is poor hygiene, because there is so much bad things going on. I don't really think that helps. I really individually cringe at that. What we need to do as mental health systems, whichever mental health system one is part of, is to appropriately anticipate and be ready. This anticipation and readiness, I must say, is rather low. SOPs or facilities for homeless mentally ill people during the COVID phase in mental health organizations, very low to non-existent. I'm wanting not to be judgmental here, but this is how I see the reality across the country. What IBAS has tried is isolation for all such at-risk people, a preventive isolation facility, as I'll tell you more in detail, testing and tracing contacts to the best extent possible. One recent case study, on 26th of April, Sunday afternoon, our emergency got a person with court order by the police for observation and treatment under 102, referred by one of the general hospital psychiatry departments in the city. Don't forget. COVID testing done already, report awaited. It takes 6 days for us to get the report. She was in the psychiatry ICU for 2 days, in the open ward for 4 days. Test report reported positive on 2nd May, last Saturday afternoon, after 6 days of waiting. The issue of mildly symptomatic or asymptomatic carriers amongst the homeless persons with mental illness is, I think, as Swami was saying on our common behalf, is a blind spot. that there can be asymptomatic carriers amongst this group. And that's really dangerous for the society and for those persons. What we did in a brief, quick narrative on that day within 5 hours was, she was shifted to a COVID center, contact tracing done for 72 staff members, in fact 75 in the next 2 days as we found. And we were ready 4 weeks in advance before this with adequate place and infrastructure for quarantine if we need. I must say here, after we sent the report to the government, beside the fact that the person was shifted, no officer has contacted any one of us at IVAS. So even for the COVID infrastructure, these persons, even when there is a COVID positive tested person, we don't seem to exist. We and our clients don't seem to matter. Fortunately, we had the quarantine facilities ready, and so we were able to quarantine those 75 people, 30 at home, 45 on the campus with full support. Totally. Testing being done for all of those 75, for the other 20 low-risk contacts, which includes myself. So we have had this recognition for the special arrangements required since early March 2020. I remember the first case I saw in the emergency on an evening was 10th March. A person brought by family. So we have had isolation rooms with PPE since then. We have now in last 10 days created almost a standard COVID ward, except that I can't call it that because legally it needs to be authorized. We have what we call a preventive isolation facility. 8 to be increased to 16 by next week. If need be, we'll do 24 beds. And these 8 beds have been full for last 10 days. Our data for this period, from the period 10th March to 24th April, we had 14 patients, homeless, mostly mentally ill persons, isolated. After 24th April, we have had 10 patients in PIF, 2 discharged, 8 still there, awaiting test reports. Please register. And in isolation, other than these 10 patients, 6 other patients, asymptomatic. And so the isolation facility for asymptomatic homeless mentally ill persons or mildly symptomatic person in preventive isolation, as we see, is actually so important. The same, of course, we provide for an occasional family-supported admission. Let me switch gears to the second part of the data that I have here to share. Started as a pilot in 2012 after a High Court order in 2009, which had approved of our idea. Mobile mental health unit, Achal Bhagat and a few other friends in Delhi sector, we had visualized this for rescue of both homeless and homebound mentally ill persons. We actually had a grandiose plan to have 2 MMHUs in each district. Believe you me, it's been very difficult to sustain even the pilot. I will not here get into the details of why, but we don't have big data sets. I can't claim to have 500 or 1,000 or 1,500 people like some other outreach services. We have kind of barely been scraping through with mobile unit with a small team continuing. It's been a satisfying but very frustrating experience. We at least reach out to homeless and homebound mentally ill persons. In March, April 2019, we had 67 calls. In these 2 months, we have had 76. No big deal. Our rate of response has perhaps increased. We are very active and much more keen to reach out. But I really keep wishing, what if we had 2 mobile mental health units in each district of Delhi as planned? We could have reached out to so many homeless and homebound mentally ill people, which unfortunately we are not able to. The third data set, following the Supreme Court order and Government of Delhi and IVAS initiative, for last 2 weeks, our teams have actually looked at 90 such temporary or long-term homes. I mean, I see this as homes for the homeless, temporary homes. About 8,500 people targeted, studied about 80 to 85% of them. Now, this is crucial for all of us. Without getting into the numbers there, let me come to the conclusion or the inference. The point prevalence of diagnosable mental health morbidity in these homeless persons is about the same as what our data supports and National Mental Health Survey says. So really speaking, I don't subscribe to this idea of mental health becoming a big epidemic now or post-COVID. Yes, what surely might happen is that those who were in treatment gap, 80%, will start coming forward. We'll perhaps reach out to them more. More importantly, we have found, our teams have consistently found that for mental health morbidity or for psychological distress, the homeless so-called less empowered people are actually very positive if given the right milieu. And so our teams have actually been able to do that with the government support in last 2 weeks. The experience in this temporary homes for the homeless, besides those who require diagnosis and treatment, the rest of the population is very positive. That's the migrant labor on the streets and state borders that we all saw on television a few weeks ago. I'll come to the last slide. So what are, as Kishore has already said very well, and Swami has summarized so well, it's a neglected area of work. Is it blind spots by systems or by most of the people who should be caring, or is it oversight? I dare say that there is stigma for homeless persons with mental illness even within the concerned groups. Mental health groups do not want to work with them. The people who work with the homeless don't want to work with the homeless mentally ill. There is, of course, in the current COVID period, no guidance or SOP. As Dr. Swami was saying, with all respect, the IPS NIMHANS guidance document, good as it is, totally blind to homeless mentally ill persons. The NHRC order about homeless persons, totally blind and silent about homeless persons with mental illness or any other disability. So essentially, this issue of delayed or neglected testing and delayed reporting is a huge, huge issue that I think we need to really upscale our sensitization and advocacy. And yet, I am not sure how much we will succeed in the COVID era or the immediate post-COVID. If the epidemic really in some parts of this country reaches its peak after the lockdown is over, as many of us suspect it will be, I think we have a serious problem, especially about this group that we are talking about today. I already spoken about this, and I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Desai. It's been a wonderful presentation. Most importantly, a lot of innovations from IBAS trying to reach out to persons with mental illness, not necessarily where you stay, but probably go to where they stay and provide services. One of the very important points you raised has been related to the lack of SOPs. And we are expected to work and provide service, but finally if something goes wrong, everyone jumps and says that you have made a mistake. And
Yes.
There are people who are taken to task, not just by mild censure, but at a level where it risks their professional, their profession, both in terms of what respect they have earned throughout their life, and to at a task where they are actually trying to help out the nation in dealing with this pandemic. So I think it is time that the ICMR, which has been providing SOPs for every other issue, provide one, or institutions like NIMHANS or even IBAS. I think you have had a case, you have had the capacity to, you have had experience of dealing with one case. So if you yourself or your institution comes out with an SOP which people can,
Sure.
it will be a very worthwhile.
Sure.
Because then we can only say that we are following this. We are following an SOP which has come out from a institution of national importance. So that becomes easy. Otherwise, each man does something which may actually not be valid for our patients, and then we're getting into trouble when actually you have gone out of the way to provide service where all others, as you rightly said, even NGOs don't want to deal with persons with mental illness. So we are trying to help. I think it's been a wonderful listening to you. There are a lot of things which are left unsaid. I think this would have required a much longer. Thank you very much. And I think I'll go to question and answer. I request all people who are participating to put their questions only in Q&A and not in chat. We are only going to take those questions which are in Q&A. If you have put it in chat, please also put it in Q&A so that it becomes easy. Chat is only for you to talk among yourselves. Anything else?
There's one question here.
Yes, sir. Now continue.
If wandering mentally ill brought to general hospital, is it compulsory to do his or her COVID testing? I if I might say, I guess as of now, definitely not compulsory. Indeed, you will have a problem like we have had. I couldn't elaborate on that. See, my friends, the trouble we have had is that homeless and destitute mentally ill persons, even when we want to get them tested, by the existing guidelines, the testing labs don't accept because we don't have a photo ID for the person. Now, at one level, I can understand the reason. The government policies would like tracing contacts if the person is found positive. Fair and square. But here is a population that will not have photo ID. So like Dr. Swami and we are all saying, there will have to be special provisions made for some specific groups. So as of now, it's not really not compulsory. You will not be able to do. We are trying to get way around this, and we try and get it done for many people with much more delayed reporting. I have one more question from Anand Jayaraman. Has COVID pandemic displaced a lot of HPMIs? Although for some it might be a blessing in disguise who might get a roof and meals regularly. Simple answer is yes, I think so. You're right, some of them, Anand, are lucky to get that roof and meals. Many of them, I think, have gone to much more hidden corners of the inner parts of these cities. This I couldn't agree more. Anonymous attendee, the whole issue of social distance has negative connotations. Can we ask for physical or safe distance? 500%. I've been saying this on Doordarshan since 20th or 22nd March. I think this whole idea of social distance, Kishore, like Vanda and people wrote, is a huge misnomer with negative connotations. Distancing, safe distancing, physical distancing, whatever.
Anyway, that word has come into the lexicon and then everyone is using it because...
I know, but you must modify, no, those?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm not contesting it.
Oh, that's Amita. How nice. Our friend from Delhi NGO sector, right? Thanks, Amita. And can you give
I'd like to make a comment.
Sure, sorry.
We had one patient come to Chittadama, and these people are referred from nearby neighboring Alo district. And then we would be very glad to take him in, but for the fact that he is unknown, we have no details of what he's been over the whether he is COVID positive or negative. And then we had to request the doctor who's sent him to do a testing, to keep him under quarantine for 15 days and then send him out so that we can take care of him.
Right.
Otherwise, we will have another 40 odd people who are there in Chittadama. We would not know, including the staff, would reach to about 50. Would not know what happened to them.
Yeah.
We put in a positive case because they're going to be in very close.
There's a couple of more questions, sir. One, I think our NGO friend, Amita or someone else is asking, can NGO give their ID for the patient testing? I would be very happy. Would you all friends believe that I've been willing to say, please use my ID? My individual ID as Director IBAS, please put that on record for these homeless mentally ill persons. The guidelines don't allow that. Ranjan Bhattacharya, our friend from Bengal, has a longish question. If you all don't mind, I'll read that out. Our friend Ranjan Bhattacharya has a question. Most of the courts are closed or functioning with limited facilities. New patients couldn't be admitted or the entry are getting delayed. Can the judiciary ask for RT-PCR report issuing the reception order? I don't think so. I don't think judiciary can do that. I wish they would not do that because then I have no idea till the test report is available, where will those homeless mentally ill persons be? At least the way we do it at IBAS is we keep them in isolation or our prevention ward. If one odd person tests positive, we take care. What's important here briefly for those of us who are interested, Ranjan and others, we have been using our friends from Asha Adhikar Abhiyan and other NGOs as NR. For the initial few months of the act, we were really troubled about this NR business for homeless persons. Section 14(4) has a proviso after the subsection D, which says that the hospital mental health establishment can use an NGO working with homeless or mentally ill persons as NR. And in this last 2 months, we have been using that provision so liberally. Dr. Sanjay, many COVID casualties in the current Resuscitation Prevention by Asking Panel. I guess, and social distancing, hand hygiene, Sanjay can't be anything else. Hand hygiene, and distancing. Housing we know has a positive impact for rehab. Have we done advocacy for housing? Amita, you and your friends have done much more than Kishore and all of us. Sorry, Swami, yours.
No. I was just trying to
Yeah.
talk about. I forgot what that question was.
Sorry.
NR. You were talking about NR. Even for the time being, till the mental health board puts an official NR, the hospital itself can nominate anyone there. That is one of the.
Yeah, but they don't accept that, sir. They don't accept that.
But it is there in the MHC.
No, we have found ways out. There's one more question.
Something called rogue. You have a panel within the board where you have like something like Friends of Nimans or Friends of Chittaram or Friends of, and someone from there can do it.
There's a question here that I think we should address. Very brief, Ravi. According to MHCA, all admissions are to be in government MHE. How prepared are they? I guess I have shared how prepared IBAS is. To my knowledge, a few other mental health institutions are prepared. I have no idea if all the mental health institutions that Kishore was referring to, 43, are really prepared. I must also clarify that according to the MHA 2017, all GHNUs are also mental health establishments. Teaching or non-teaching departments. Across the country, they still haven't been prepared for even admissions, forget COVID prepared admissions. Swami, do you want me to take more questions or would you please? I don't want to. You're the moderator, sorry.
There are a lot of questions which are actually
more,
we can't answer here.
Yeah.
I'm all from the NGO. I think they are. You can answer them later, but ensure that it reaches the whole lot of.
I'll surely
us here.
I'll do that.
Okay.
If Ganesh
is very important. These questions which are asked are very important. Kishore, any last words? 1 minute. I'll just see. Nice to know that testing results are just like general population. That's only a comment. We don't have identity to use. Okay. This issue of identity was already discussed by Dr. Nimesh. In Shantivanam, we are not admitting any HMI since lockdown. We don't know his status. If he's positive, we don't have isolation ward. We can't evacuate. Yeah, that's the problem with most people who are running. This is Shantivanam is a quality NGO which is running, which is working in Trichy. So, Dr. Desai, as you rightly said, it's most impossible to get governments to respond. We worked in Nagpur Mental Hospital and run DMHP. Admissions to mental hospital is restricted in the name of precautions. So they are diagnosed as severe mental disorders in quarantine facility. I have a question to everyone. A lot of our patients are severely mentally ill. How much do you think they will be able to follow this question of safe distancing, as well as safe physical distancing, as well as repeated washing and all that? They are all not necessarily very difficult to follow, but they require inner motivation to go and do these things which is there. So it itself, actually I came across some work which is not yet published, where they found that hardly less than 15% understood what it means to repeatedly wash their hands and what it means to keep safe distance, despite being counseled about these procedures. This was with work with severe mental illness, people with severe mental illness. So that is one thing. It's all of good to say that this is what is to be done. But if we are not able to ensure that people on the other side understand what we mean, then it's going to be difficult.
There are, Swami, if you allow, there are two questions
Sure.
I guess one is from Ramakrishnan from Shantivanam and one is from Tasneem Raja from, I guess, Nagpur, NGO. Both relatively similar, that if an NGO finds it difficult to get a homeless person with mental illness admitted anywhere, where should they really be taken? I really do believe, and I can't speak for all states and the nation, but I really do believe that ultimately it's the state mental health institutions like IBAS, CIP, Agra, Gwalior, Nimans, who must live up to this. Allow me to say this briefly. I have not had it easy within my own mental health faculty and staff or my other hospital staff in last 6 to 7 weeks. I have had to walk through a lot of issues of groups and individuals before I accept homeless mentally ill person pending testing. But I was not willing to give up because sitting at IBAS, I really did see, at least for Delhi, my duty to respond to this need. So I don't see why our NGO friends should hesitate to work through the law and make sure that state mental health institutions look after these people. I don't know if I'm saying too much, but
No, it's okay. What you are saying is not too much. Too much requires to be done, which we are not able to do. That is more
Yes.
important. There's one. How does one continue medication for these homeless, those homeless
Yes.
with mental health challenges?
I'll take it quickly. See, what we do for homeless mentally ill persons after treatment is actually according to 100 subsection 6 or other provisions, shift them mostly to other shelter homes, social care homes. And so the tie-up needs to be between the social care homes and the mental health institution to see that the medication is continued.
I think we have gone through the whole
Yes, sir.
list of questions. Is there any last words by Dr. Kishore? Kishore, where is
He's
Kishore?
left. I think he has left.
Oh, Kishore has left. Then the
Sorry, one more. I think my friend Madhu Juneja, it might be, or somebody else. Would the homeless PMI be ready to give his consent for COVID treatment? As many of us will recognize, this will depend on the capacity as per Mental Health Care Act, Section 4. So the consent for COVID or for admission or coercive treatment for mental health will depend on capacity assessment.
So thank you, Dr. Kishore and Dr. Desai. This has been a very
Thank you,
comprehensive management of,
Thank
actually
you.
they said the management of homeless persons with mental illness during COVID pandemic. I said we should not use the word management, we should use issues related to that. And also issues are not only related to COVID pandemic, because there are already so many associated social issues like lockdown, quarantine and things like that, which all of us are subjected to. And most importantly, absence of support which the homeless persons with mental illness are going to go through in this times is something which we have to discuss. And I think this has come out fairly decently in this webinar. I thank both the panelists, Dr. Kishore and Dr. Nimesh, and I thank Ganeshan, Vijay, Mahesh, and
Pleasure.
Jagdish for the support given. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, sir. Good night.
Thank you. It was a great
Thank
pleasure,
you.
sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijay.
Yeah.
Where do we
Thank
go
you.
for dinner, Vijay?
Yes, sir. Definitely. Okay. With this, we wind up today's session. There were about 60 participants, and I thank every participant who have participated. Because of you, the program can be, prepared, and we can conduct more of these kind of programs. So thank you, Dr. Swaminath, for conducting and running it so smoothly. Yes, we do go for dinner tonight. Yes. Thank you.
Okay,
I'll meet you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, right. Leave meeting. Thank you, Ganeshan.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure.